Hi, I'm Jeff Ranke, Editorial Director of Manufacturing.net and Manufacturing Business Technology. Welcome to Security Breach. Late last year, we discussed Lockbit's ransomware attack on Boeing and the ensuing cyber incident that resulted in a large quantity of the aerospace giant's data being stolen. One of the experts we tapped into in breaking down the attack and its fallout was Tony Pietrocola. In addition to serving as the president of AgileBlue, he also heads the Northern Ohio chapter of InfraGard, which works directly with the FBI on cybercrime. You can check out that Boeing episode in the archives. In addition to his extensive knowledge on threat actors like Lockbit, Tony also has a tremendous amount of insight on a number of cybersecurity challenges that continue to plague the industrial sector. This includes ways to improve attack surface visibility, especially as hackers are beginning to combine old-school techniques with next-gen tools like AI. So with that in mind, here's some additional insight from Tony Pietrocola. So, Tony, you mentioned something earlier on that Boeing felt they caught this early enough that it wasn't as big of a deal. Now, that could certainly be corporate speak, that could certainly be a PR spin, but could it also speak to the fact that maybe the industrial sector is getting a little bit better in terms of visibility on the attack plane? We're getting a little bit better at seeing things more quickly. It's such a huge issue as the attack surface grows. We have more connected devices. What's your take there in terms of visibility and maybe how we're improving?
You know, you hit a great point there with connected devices. I mean, there's more connected devices now than ever. Tomorrow there'll be more than ever. Same thing. They just continue, they don't add, they multiply in big numbers, the number of connected devices. Further, and this is backed up by data. This isn't just Tony having a hypothesis. Remote work, don't tell me it hasn't had a huge impact. When people are working from home, they're not. I go to Starbucks when I'm on the road. Starbucks, buy their stock because, man, let me tell you, that place is packed and everybody's got a big drink. So hotel lobbies, when I'm walking up and down the airplane, man, you see everybody cranking away. People are cranking away because we're trying to work faster because we're remote. I think that's a big thing. I don't think we're working smarter. So, when you think about VPNs and not moving, we're seeing a lot of customers. Let me give you a couple examples. Moving files off corporate networks or SharePoints into private, boxes or drop boxes. Emailing really important, critical things to your personal email because maybe you can access that from home and you don't want to be on VPN. Not because you're malicious, just because there's some negligence. You're seeing a huge rise with that. So I do think that remote work is putting a huge spring into a lot of these things as well. And by the way, remote work isn't going anywhere, unfortunately. It seems here to stay.
No, great points. So, Tony, segueing a little bit, we've been talking a lot about the bad guys. You're involved with a couple of organizations trying to do a lot of good stuff. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about, first, let's discuss AgileBlue and some of the work you're doing there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. AgileBlue is our goal is we're a 24/7 security operations center and SOAR platform. So really, we need to detect cyber attacks before they happen. And we have automated technology that hopefully responds very quickly to mitigate our clients' risk. That's what we do. We're a global company, 24/7. So we see a lot of, crazy, funky things. Coincidentally, I'm also president of InfraGard in Ohio. InfraGard's a great organization. It's a private business joint organization with the FBI where we can share information, data, skill sets, expertise, all about keeping critical infrastructure in the United States of America safe. And we have over 80-some thousand members globally, in the United States, backed by the FBI, which is awesome. And the amount of data that we're sharing all the time is tremendous. And by the way, there's a lot of data because if you think about it, everything's critical infrastructure, not just nuclear power plants in our grid, which people think, but what about anything? What about superchargers for people running electric cars? If those go down, how do you drive? How do you charge your vehicle? There's so much that's now become critical infrastructure because we're all digitized. It's not just a power plant or a grid. You can argue it's just about everything.
No, couldn't agree. I think most of our audience is definitely familiar with InfraGard, but if you're not, check them out, get involved. Great organization to become a bigger player. Kind of coincides with everything we always talk about in terms of sharing more information, being as transparent as possible about a lot of these attacks. Helps us all become stronger sort of collectively in our cyber defense planning and processes.
It does. And I'll tell you what's even more beneficial as well. The sharing is great, have to have it. But understanding the mindset of the FBI and helping the FBI has to have the FBI help us as private business. And hey, this needs to be a collaborative effort. If something does happen, you can't bury it in the pillow anymore. You got to bring it up. You got to get them involved, and you got to listen to them. Now, paying ransomware, I understand with the FBI, with their preferences. I get it. Organization has nothing. They don't have the backups. They can't get their stuff back on. It's a tough decision because how do you stay down without going out of business? So, FBI brings a lot of education as well. It's not just the sharing of information. The education to these businesses is important. And I'll also say this, the organizations that are part of InfraGard are definitely of high consequence, not just big industries, small companies too, that have a big play into critical infrastructure. The majority of people are employed by small and mid-sized businesses. That holds true for critical infrastructure companies.
No, great points. Absolutely. Tony, I'd like to get your thoughts on some different things that are coming up around the pike, some different trends and whatnot. One of the things we saw at the beginning of 2023 was sort of a downward trend in the number of ransomware attacks. I think there was a number of different variables involved there, one of which was probably those dwelling attacks that we talked about before. I think folks sort of took a break, but then we saw a huge spike second quarter, and it's been strong the remainder of the year. Do you think we might see a similar dynamic going into 2024, or are the hackers just going to sort of keep plowing ahead?
Something tells me they're going to continue to plow ahead. I think there's too much going on geopolitically, macroeconomic wise, where this is becoming extremely lucrative. It's paying big bucks. So I mean, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to have a lull. I think they will step up, and let me give you one more reason why. Back then, we also didn't have the advent and the publication of ChatGPT, which has now led us into some interesting more attacks. Not necessarily pure attacks. I'm not saying that. I mean, they're here coming. Fraud has been on the uptick. Deepfake video, audio on the uptick because AI is making that super easy. AI is also allowing more social engineering to happen at a greater scale. So you might not have a pure old school ransomware attack, but and Lockbit does social engineering as well. Yeah. The more we can peel back the social engineering, I think that just leads obviously more into the ransomware. So you're going to see, in my opinion, way more of it because we have. And the Vegas stuff, by the way, was a social engineering attack as well. Also old school calling into a help desk, asking, reset my password. Yeah. That crazy, that worked. But if that proliferates, it's not going to proliferate just to proliferate. There is motives behind that equal money. And I think that's only going to make it easier. I'll also say this, ChatGPT, there's a lot of research going on of how effective it's creating phishing emails, creating code for potential obfuscation and things like that. ChatGPT, really good stuff. Love it. We're utilizing it, we're testing it. But so are the bad guys. And, they can get around the sensors, so to speak, or, the safeguards that have been put in place. And those case studies are out. And we've actually, if you went to Black Hat, there was a number of case studies showing that during some of the presentations at DEF CON.
No, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of AI. It's a double-edged sword without a doubt. There's a lot of positives we can take in becoming stronger. But so many ways that the hackers can use it for the bad stuff that they like to do. So
yeah, and they're really good at that, aren't they? Like they don't mess around. Like they're aggressive, man. I'll tell you, they're aggressive and smart, and they have. I in college I played football and I was a defender and I was a safety. I was the guy way at the back. Yeah. I always wanted to be a wide receiver, though, man. Let me run as fast as I can. Let's see if that guy can stop me. Unfortunately, my hands weren't very good, so I played defense, not offense. But hey, that's beside the point.
So you fit that whole stereotype. Defensive backs play defense because they can't catch like wide receivers. All right, I get it.
Can't catch, and we are aggressive people. We like to hit, so we want the guy to maybe try to catch the ball so we can, kind of knock it free.
I was a defensive guy myself, so I can definitely appreciate that. Looking at some other trends, Tony, we could talk football as much as you want too. That'd be great. But we'll talk cybersecurity here. Talk about some of these other trends. One of the things we've seen is just this proliferation of new cybersecurity tools. A lot of them really focused really specifically on the industrial sector for obvious reasons. This seems like it could also be a double-edged sword because it's great to have a lot of options, but you can also become inundated with all these tools and maybe not have the right stuff doing the right things. I'd like to get your take there in terms of maybe some best practices or some guidance in terms of selecting the tools, putting them in the right places, and things you've seen.
That is a fantastic question, and one that will probably change all the time. Now, look, a layered security approach is critical. Like, you can't do one or two things and say, good to go. A nice layered approach helps. Here's something that we see. Folks, when you look at privileges and access, folks think once things are set up, that's just the way it is. The one thing we see in a big exploitation, nobody monitors the access and the privileges, right? So like, you do all this to set things up, and then are you monitoring, hey, the people who should be accessing X, Y, and Z, are they the only ones monitoring X, Y, and Z? Are they doing other things? Are these accounts doing things they shouldn't be doing? So that layered security approach, monitoring the access privileges you have, of course, the ridiculous things that we continue to talk about, like these types of things. These are the type of approaches that need to be put together because there is no fail safe. And I'll say this, on this Boeing, if they only got some old email they segregated in, that's fine. That's really thinking through mitigating your risk, meaning if somebody gets something and this is all they get, they're really getting nothing. So segmentation, I was just at a client this past Monday, Tuesday, an airport that we work with. So mission critical, airport, rail, police, so it's safety. And the topic is segmentation. The more we can segment, right, in terms of even micro segmentation, the more we can reduce that risk, the more we can mitigate the risk. And now if something happens, they're getting a piece to the puzzle, but not the puzzle. And if we could do more of that and be smart with that, I think that actually really diminishes what these folks can do. Now, here's the problem with that. The larger an organization or the more complex, segmentation's tough. It's expensive. It takes time. And people talk about it. It's in their security plan. It's in their plan. But I'll ask you, you're shaking your head, Jeff. You probably see this. People just don't get around to it because it's hard. It's not easy, right?
It is hard, and especially in the industrial sector, we run into this all the time, whether we're talking about establishing frameworks or putting together inventory or establishing patches and implementing those. The main focus of an industrial facility or enterprise is to produce stuff. It's to make stuff. We want to put product out the door. So doing some of these other security elements, even though they're part of the bigger picture and they're becoming a bigger, more important part of that whole enterprise structure, it still stops them from doing the primary function of what they're there to do, which is make stuff. So it's an ongoing challenge. It is difficult. And that's why I like talking to guys like you who can offer us some insight on how to balance those things, because it's a struggle to get internal buy-in. It's a struggle to get those internal plans moving forward. And that kind of leads into something else I was hoping we could talk about, which is cybersecurity is almost becoming the same type of conversation as plant safety. Everybody agrees. It's super important. We got to keep employees safe. We have to do all of these things. But when you keep talking about it, it almost becomes white noise. Everybody's like, yeah, I got it. I know. And then they go out and write their password on a Post-it note and leave it on their computer. So what are some things that you've seen that have maybe been better practices to help internally get people to realize they play such an important role in cybersecurity and how that can sort of trickle upwards in helping the whole enterprise?
My whole career has been in tech, and I think the biggest thing where tech fails is it's tech by people in tech. So sometimes we talk like an Apple and Steve Jobs. Name a company that did better to break down technology so that my grandma could understand what the heck he was pitching, right? That's what made him so uniquely special. Same thing in cyber. When you think about the C-suite, when you think about boards of directors, cyber makes their heads spin, or they just think it's something going to hack into you and how's our cyber, good, bad, whatever. I'll tell you what's helped. And this isn't my company, so I can plug it. Things like security scorecard, tools like that can actually take what your security posture looks like and give it a letter grade or give it some kind of scoring system where somebody can sit down and that doesn't look great. I went to college. C got me by, but I didn't share that with mom. Like, okay. So some of these scoring mechanisms are really helping our customers. Now, are they, 100, are they gospel? Not at all. But I think they help start the conversation where people could sit back who aren't technical and be like, ugly. I mean, we really got to do something here, especially given where you are, if you're industrial, if you're part of DoD or whatever that supply chain might be. So, Jeff, it's a hard question to answer. Somebody asked me earlier today in another interview I was doing, are boards of directors now scrambling? Are they staying up late at night? I'm like, I think only over earnings reports. I still don't see the directors still that concerned. But I'll tell you what, they're going to start being when you see some of this fraud with AI. So
no, it makes a ton of sense, especially with the plan for becoming more visualization focused. You've got KPIs that are up on screen so people can see how they're tracking towards their goals. So making cybersecurity a part of that whole data reporting and those types of dashboards makes a ton of sense, and keeping more people involved in it should get greater buy-in, I would hope. Makes sense.
I would hope as well. And, this is anecdotal. This isn't a hard study. I do see cyber budgets keeping up. It's not like people are like, hey, we're probably going to cut X, Y, and Z. We're hearing, hey, we're probably going to stay here and probably add a little extra for A, B, and C. And so we're starting to hear that a little bit more. I do think it's resonating. And by the way, with the SolarWinds CISO officially being charged, that right there officially put every CISO and every CIO, because a lot of companies don't have CISOs, and then virtual CISOs on record to say, if things go bad and you don't do the right thing, you could be held personally liable. That's going to make some people really start getting the C-suite involved and probably start pulling the alarm instead of saying, hey, I think our cyber's good.
No, great point. And again, it leads back to that conversation, which, yeah, we don't want to give the hackers too much credit and too much publicity, but we have to talk about them and what they're capable of doing and just sort of having this greater level of accountability throughout the sector. So it makes sense. So, Tony, this has been awesome. We've talked about AI, we've talked about ransomware trends and other elements. Anything when you look ahead that might be a big trend or something that we need to keep in mind as we look at cybersecurity for the next year and a half?
I think a trend that I've seen started over the last couple of months, and I don't think this is going anywhere. Companies, so people that work at companies are plugging PII, they're plugging IP, they're plugging patient information, they're plugging confidential company information into GPTs like ChatGPT, like Bard, other ones as well. And they're not doing it because they're malicious. They're looking to see where that could help them with business. And they're putting so much confidential information in. Well, when it goes in, it can also come out. And if it goes in constructed, it can come out deconstructed to do the opposite. And we've seen actual customers doing this and saying, what do we do now? And you can't call ChatGPT and be like, hey, I need my information out. That ain't gonna work. That thing's in the model now. So we're seeing a lot of that. And I do think that could present backdoor problems going into 2024. I hope it doesn't, but come on, how can it not? That's a trend we're seeing a lot of. So can you keep people from going to ChatGPT? No, and you shouldn't. They should use it responsibly, but you can't plug confidential IP or patient information, which we've seen, or your earnings results like Samsung did before going public. And that stuff is now part of that model.
So, I mean, this leads to a bigger question, I guess, beyond just cybersecurity, but is that going to be maybe not the downfall, not being that dramatic, but definitely limitations placed on open source AI when it comes to these language models? I mean, is that kind of where we're trending?
I mean, it could. I can tell you this, personally, we're using some Anthropic Claude models, LLMs, in some of the things we're running. And you're right. One of the reasons maybe we chose that over some other ones is because of that, because we do want to analyze some of the data we have. And you can't trust it from a public perspective. Now, the tools are so vast, the compute shared, but you got to know what you're sharing. Otherwise, it could really put the organization in a tough way. And by the way, how many organizations as of right now do you think have AI or ChatGPT policy? I'd have to assume basically none. Yeah. But that's something you're going to start seeing because that risk needs to be mitigated as well.
Well, a lot of this stuff, I mean, this is another one of those things, those pieces of low-hanging fruit you were talking about. I always use blocking and tackling as the analogy. That's where we can start. If we can just start there with getting some of this basic stuff done and build up from there, because I think a lot of, especially in the industrial sector, cybersecurity isn't something they run from, but it just seems so daunting to take on at times that try to, use your analogy, eat the elephant, drink the ocean, whatever, start with the basic stuff and we'll be okay.
I hear you, man. I hear you. The problem is, like you said 2 minutes ago, everything's connected. There's more and more devices. And the ransomware gangs, or I should say the hackers, they're pretty aggressive. So, these things are on the up, and we've got to do our best to hopefully mitigate what they do.
Thanks, Tony. And for more information on the work AgileBlue does, you can check them out at AgileBlue.com. And thank you for joining us today. To catch up on past episodes, you can go to manufacturing.net, IEN.com, or mbtmag.com. You can also check Security Breach out wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Amazon, and Overcast. And if you have a cybersecurity story or topic that you'd like to have us explore on Security Breach, you can reach me at jeff@ien.com. For Tony Pietrocola, I'm Jeff Ranke, and this is Security Breach.